I'm Danny Otto. Welcome into an all-new episode of That Recap Show. Now, before we get into the episode, just want to say, major spoiler alert, we are going to be going over everything from Season 2, Episode 7 of the Marvel What If series. So if you haven't watched that episode yet, you may want to pause this video, head over to Disney+, check out that episode, and then come back and enjoy the breakdown. Now, with that out of the way, let's start the show!
Poppin' Off presents That Recap Show.
Joining with me to break down everything from Season 2, Episode 7 of the What If series, it's Johnny Rico!
Hello.
Hello!
What's up?
I'm super energetic today. I don't know why I have all this energy, but
Happy Danny.
I know we're nearing. I guess it's just the excitement of like everything in this series is starting to ramp up. We're getting towards the end of the season, so I know big things are about to start happening. And in the meantime, we had the return of one of my favorite characters, I have to say, because I immediately went out and bought a plushie of this character. We have the return of Morris!
You can see Morris.
Morris.
Oh, Morris! They can see you. You're real.
Yeah!
Yay.
Is it bad? Is it bad that I understand like when this episode takes place in the grand scheme of things is long before this person existed. But when I saw Morris, the only voice I could think of was Trevor's.
Trevor. Oh, yeah. Slattery. I was like, yeah, sure.
I just kept hearing his voice like as if he was about to
Is the
translate.
interpreter?
Yeah, like as the interpreter of what Morris was actually saying. Luckily, Hela could kind of understand what Morris was saying.
Yeah, she's multilingual. Thank God.
Yeah, but look, I loved getting some Morris in this episode. I thought it was I was not expecting it, and it was not in any of the trailer clips, at least from what I had seen before going into this episode. So I was very happy for that return. I have nothing bad to say about this episode. I have more that I want to talk about in the big takeaways, and I don't want to kind of get to that right away. But I thought this was another great, what if episode where we kind of, we took some stuff that was familiar, and then we changed some things that made like kind of an original storyline, and we got to see some really cool stuff happen. But Rico, before I get into anything, I know I was kind of dancing around a lot of stuff there, but before we get into anything, Rico, what were some of your instant reactions to episode 7?
Yeah, this was probably, aside from the last episode, this is probably my favorite episode. Because you're bringing together probably two of the more fascinating characters to me within the last probably few years of the MCU, which are Hela and Wenwu, and you're combining them for a pretty awesome story. And one of the things I really loved about this episode, we finally get to learn a little bit more about the Ten Rings themselves. Not just like, not only like where their possible origins are, because now we kind of learn that they're actually they're from space. We don't know 100% for sure they're Kree or not. I think because of the Marvels, we kind of learn that they're not really directly connected. So there's still many like kind of theories of what there could be out as far as like the origins for the Ten Rings. We kind of learn a little bit more as far as them being from space, and also kind of see like the level of power they can actually be. Like where we actually got to see when we go toe to toe with freaking Odin, for God's sake. Like so that was like really fun to see, and one of the more like amazing action sequences I thought of in the whole show. But yeah, I really love seeing like this kind of character development stuff with characters that you don't really expect it with. I mean, just Hela herself is just really fascinating in general. But yeah, this is just a really fascinating episode.
Yeah, absolutely. I was telling you even before we started recording this. After finishing this episode, I immediately just wanted to watch Shang-Chi again. Yeah. Like it was just like
one of
that
my favorites.
Was the kind of the feels that I got from this episode. It just kind of made me go, I haven't watched Shang-Chi in a little while. I should watch that again. Like just because I wanted to see more like of that universe. I guess that little carved out universe of that movie and everything like that. But that's what like this series has been really good at doing in general, is kind of just bringing back, kind of fond memories of past MCU projects that like I watching stuff. I was telling you after watching the holiday special, with Justin Hammer, I went back and watched Iron Man 2, which I have not watched in a very long time. But just like I wanted to see some of those scenes with Justin Hammer and just some of those interactions with Tony and stuff like that. But that's what I think this series has been doing. It's kind of reigniting kind of the fond memories of MCU past, basically. But Rico, you want to get to some big takeaways?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome! All right. Just like I was saying, I'm going to kick off big takeaways because I didn't want to get in too far into this, but what I've been kind of saying throughout our recapping of this season is one thing that the What If series in general has been doing so well is they're taking elements from familiar MCU projects and they're blending them into new storylines and creating kind of new concepts and new ideas and stuff like that. This did a really good job of taking some of the aspects of the first Thor movie, and like I had already gotten into some of the aspects from Shang-Chi, a lot of the aspects from Shang-Chi. But I just really liked seeing how that played out because we also got, some of the information that we did get during Thor Ragnarok from Odin, where, we didn't know anything about Hela until Thor Ragnarok, basically in our IRL MCU. But like just we kind of got to revisit, how Odin was back then with Hela and stuff like that. And even throughout, this episode, like when he comes back to Earth to see Hela and basically he wanted the 10 rings, we saw how Odin was back then, even before, Thor, the first Thor movie. We saw how he was kind of more combative. I don't want to say like angry because he kind of still had, but he was still wise. He just didn't get all of that combatant side, I guess, under control until the first Thor movie, because that's where he's very wise and he wants like to pass on all of his knowledge to Thor and stuff like that. And so he does the same thing. That's why I said like we kind of got the same situation, but we see how Odin of the past Odin acted basically in that situation versus how he acts years later in the same situation during the first Thor movie type of thing, where he wants to welcome Thor back and stuff like that instead of why are you like being angry and stuff like that. Like it was just really interesting that we got that, and still true to character, and still we get to see how we get to like visit this pocket of this conquering Odin and how he was and stuff like that, and kind of see how the same situation would have played out at a different time, I guess, if that all makes sense. That's why I really enjoyed it, and that's why I've been really enjoying this entire series, is just kind of taking elements of stuff that we know and are familiar from our original MCU experience, and then just kind of shifting them a little bit and creating kind of this new opportunity for storylines and stuff like that. And it's just been, I just wanted to point that out because I just think it's been really interesting throughout this entire season and the series in general. But I'm just every single time I'm really, kind of just fascinated with kind of what they weave together with something familiar and then something new playing off of that. But Rico, what were some of your big takeaways from episode 7?
Yeah, it's interesting to see how Odin handled the situation, like the similar way that he did in Thor 1, as opposed to, in the main MCU's timeline where he didn't handle it the same way. And I think it was more like he's a lot older, I guess. He was a little more at peace with himself, and he wasn't. Yeah, exactly. Like I said, he wasn't the same younger Odin like he's portrayed in this particular episode, because that's just plays well long before modern day, right?
Yeah.
So. I just find it very interesting that it's almost like, what if he just didn't make that mistake beforehand, and he just immediately he taught the same lesson to Hela that he did to Thor, but before Thor was even born. But I thought it played in really well to actually Hela's overall transformation, because we're really learning more about how, like, as she's going through all these lessons with Jai and Talo and stuff like that, she's kind of learning more about herself and learning how, like, she was kind of being manipulated by Odin at a very young age, because he was he
Yeah.
was taming things that like you said, like tame things that you want to keep under control, like he did with the wolf, right? We kind of learned that he was doing the same thing with Hela the entire time. And when she kind of realized that, she goes through that big self reflection period. That's when she goes to this kind of like Gandalf like transformation. She develops that appreciation for life, like Odin, supposedly like sent her to do, like he said, but he like he said, like she even exceeded his expectations. Like
Right.
never would have expected that she would have done so much to actually overpower him the way she did. So I really found the way that they kind of took that like this kind of like underrated flawed aspect of Odin from the main MCU timeline that we learned, especially in Ragnarok, when we kind of there's that one scene where like they break down the ceiling and we actually get to see like the real history of what they
Yeah.
did and stuff like that, and we get to see kind of like this what this whole episode is based off of that. So yeah, I just think it's really cool that we're kind of shining a light that like Odin is a much more complex character that we were kind of led to believe because we saw him in this, I would say, his old man phase, right, later on in life. So we got to see him a little bit more like in this kind of like introspective version of him. Again, more wise, and he was kind of he kind of learned lessons from his mistakes later on. So yeah, it's a unique spin on both characters for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And you want to get to some predictions?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Why don't you kick off predictions?
Okay, so this is an interesting episode because there's no real ending here that ties it out. Like we've been used to that these last couple episodes because we gotten these little post credit teases or end of the episode teases that are big connections to what's going to happen later on. But this one seems pretty much like a bottle episode, and this kind of seems well contained in its own universe. But I just love the story that it told within just a character like Hela and bringing back a character like Wenwu in the Ten Rings. But really, now that we know a little bit more about the Ten Rings and how they they have a little bit more of a cosmic origin, we know that Odin at some point has some knowledge of this, of what they were or what they are. I'm really curious though, again, what that pinging signal was from the post credit scene.
I know we never got a payoff.
Yeah, there's still that untied thread from the movie, and I feel like that's just kind of like what I'm looking forward to seeing next. It's just kind of like how they're going to follow that up. I'm sure they had plans, and maybe there's some plans that have changed now with things that have happened. But they could still spin it in some pretty cool ways, I would think. I was still hoping that it was like being a ping from the Fantastic Four. Personally, I'm looking for any kind of Fantastic Four connection I can get right now. But yeah, I really want to learn more about the Ten Rings, and I was again also I was also hoping the Marvels would kind of like help us out a little bit there. But I think we kind of learned that they're a little bit more separate, even though they look very similar. But yeah, just give me more info on those, the Ten Rings, and more like there's a lot of these unanswered questions in the MCU, and that's probably one of the biggest ones for me right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just like you cannot wait to find out, what we're gonna get, I guess, from the Shang-Chi sequel. Hopefully that'll clear up some questions that we have. And yeah, I mean, I always thought they were gonna be connected to the Marvels, to the Bangle from Miss Marvel, like all that stuff. We always thought it was gonna be connected. But yeah, maybe Fantastic Four. We don't know. But just as you were kind of giving your takeaway, I kind of thought about this because just like you said, it's a bottle episode. We really don't have any connection to the overall plot of the season yet. Like at least from this episode. I mean, we've had it in past episodes, which connected to characters that obviously are gonna be the bigger arc. But what I was just thinking was, what I would like to see is, and I kind of said, I know I said this in one of our early recaps, and I can't remember what episode I was saying it to, but I would really like to see a sequel episode for this episode in particular, because I'd like to see how this experience from Hela changed things moving forward when Odin, like when we get to the events of Thor 1, like the first Thor movie. Like, because he chose to do basically the same, I'm gonna say, punishment to Hela in this instance that he did to Thor in the first Thor movie, instead of locking her away and trapping her for forever, or at least until he dies. Is it going to be reversed? Like, would he just lock up Thor for being a dick type of thing, or would he do the exact same thing and then we just get the normal events of the first Thor movie? But we still have Hela on Earth, So if Thor got sent to Earth, do we have Thor kind of interacting with Hela at that point? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Well, that's when she's the all mother, I think, because she dethroned Odin. Like, and because there's the ending shot there where she saves Gamora from her impending life with Thanos at the end, which is basically like almost like a mirroring life of hers. I think that's kind of cool how they ended the episode with that, because there is a lot of similarities between Gamora and Hela, because they're both like these people who are these merchants of death that are raised by tyrants. And so like the way that they ended that with her saving her from that life, I thought was really cool. So I think a sequel episode would be really cool, but just seeing her as like as the all mother and like kind of like almost saving the entire cosmos.
I mean, look, I'm totally for that. I was more sticking just from this, like just here, and then seeing if we like fast forwarding to the events of Thor 1, kind of not changing like too much, just changing like I want to know if Odin like reconsidered making that choice, and because he made that choice with Hela, would he do the opposite choice with Thor? Like, you know what I mean?
They
Like,
established if Thor was already born.
I don't think so. I don't think
Or,
he was
or
around.
or if Odin was with Frigga.
I don't think so, because
who knows if that even would have happened? Like that's another like, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
There's a lot of things to consider.
Yeah, that's why like this is one of the episodes I definitely would love to see like a sequel to, because we don't know how far the ripples go. We don't know if it changes just
it
a
happened
little
so
bit.
early in time.
Exactly. And that's why it's kind of cool to kind of think ahead and say like, okay, well, if that happened, how would that change this? How would that change that? How would that, you know what I mean? I'd like to think that I like I said, I wish we could just fast forward and get to the event of the first Thor movie and have basically nothing really dramatic change. Like he still grows up not knowing Hela, because Hela's on Earth, or Hela is, wherever she is. So she's not there like while he's growing up, and while Loki's there, and all of those events still happen. And then Thor does what he did at the beginning of the first Thor movie. And I want to know how Odin reacts to that. Like whether he chooses to lock up Thor because he didn't do that to Hela, or whether he goes, well, that worked out so well for Hela, I'm going to do the exact same thing to Thor. And then we get Thor meeting Hela for the first time, but it's a positive meeting instead of when she's trying to kill him.
Interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, my mind's going. So I was just thinking of this as you were pitching that. I feel like there's definitely something with Wenwu and Hela.
Yeah.
And I feel like, of course, with how long they like how early they get together here as like this kind of like dynamic duo within the cosmos, they probably have to at least get together at some point and then have a child. Whereas she is kind of like the Odin figure to a Shang-Chi / Thor like son of her own. And it's almost like, what if she has Thor as a son, or like it's like almost like she's the mother, not Odin, because they're not sister, but it's not Thor.
I know,
but it's her own son. Yeah, you know what I mean. So she has a son named Thor, wherever it is. It's not her brother. Don't make it weird. But
you gotta pick
yeah, like
any other name besides Thor.
Well, because you take it from one aspect of the other. You take one from Shang-Chi or take one from Thor. Like she has a son that she names Thor, or you because Thor doesn't exist in this timeline at all.
I know.
Or you have Wenwu and her have Shang-Chi, or Xialing or whoever it is. I think there's so many different ways that you can spin this and have fun with the story, I feel like.
Yeah, and that's kind of the theme that we've kind of, I guess, touched on after a lot of the episodes. This is fun, and that's why I can't wait to kind of always see what's next for the What If. Like I'm already thinking about what like season 3 could be, because like there's so much opportunity to kind of just drift off into theory and stuff like that. And I've said in the past plenty of times, I love just reading people's theories about stuff, but when you have a blank canvas to kind of start anything you want and then ripple out from there, it's so much fun. It's just like sitting there and just like going, okay, well that would happen because this happened, and what if that happened then, type of thing. So it's just that's what I really like about this series. It's just kind of like, what can we make happen, type of thing, and then just build it around that. And it's just fun. That's what this series is, and I'm really enjoying it. At the end of the day, I hope they keep making seasons of this, moving forward a lot. I mean, I hope more like for my entertainment, but also for people's jobs, because I'm sure this employs a lot of people through Marvel with animators and voice actors and all this stuff. but also like it's just the value it does for everyone out there who can kind of, just theorize stuff and just kind of, have these kind of fun conversations like this.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, as we always say, that's what we think. Let us know in the comments below. What did you think of episode 7? And is Thor ever going to exist in this particular universe? And would you like to see a sequel and see kind of, how events play out moving forward between Thor and Shang-Chi and Hela? And there's no wrong answer here. I mean, we can have so much fun in the comment section about this. And as always, look, don't forget, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to hear about all of our latest audio and video podcast releases. Bye, everybody!
Popping Off presents That Recap Show.